Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
For centuries, ancient cultures knew the secrets to longevity, vitality, and healing. Now, modern science is catching up. Ageless Blueprint is a podcast that will reveal the modern secrets of better health and a better life. Join Dr. Eldred Taylor here today and every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. As together we discover the secrets to better health through science and spirituality. A better life with Ageless Blueprint starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
Hello, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, and it's 9 o'clock a.m. on Eastern Daylight Time because we all sprang forward last weekend. And I am Dr. Taylor. I am the hormone doctor and the spiritual MD. And this is the Ageless Blueprint podcast. And welcome, everyone. You know, I've been doing this for a little over a year now, and you know, I do this every Wednesday, and I hope that people are listening or, are viewing it. And sometimes you just don't know. And so last night I was doing my question and answer in my school group, and some people were saying, hey, I just listened to your podcast. So, the feedback really motivates me to keep going, because sometimes it's lonely here trying to come up with these podcasts and trying to do all these things. So I welcome your feedback. If you say, hey, keep it up, or, hey, you're doing a bad job or great job, you need to do this or that. I appreciate the feedback, because that gives me motivation to keep going. So anyway, today, I'm always about talking about stress and how stress almost influences everything. We wrote the book, The Stress Connection, because we came to that realization. But, as you stay into something and you focus on something long enough, you get new ideas and things get revealed to you and all this, So a lot of times we talk about the current day stress, and that's important. This is a stressful time here. We've got a war that's going on. We've got financial upheaval. We have all kinds of things going on here. So we think about the stress right now. But I'll tell you, when I went to Ghana, and I'll talk about that, I felt like some of the stress that happened in Ghana was in me. Okay, is that when I was over there, I could feel the heaviness of what was going on there. So that made me and my wife, we decided, like, look, I wonder if there's any scientific evidence about the stress suffered by previous generations. I mean, it'd be 4, 5, 6 years. Does that actually affect how we respond to stress, or how we are wired for stress even right now? Could it be passed down from generations? That stress and agony or whatever could be passed down. So that's what we're going to talk about. Is the stress that you're feeling right now, is it connected to some generational stressors? And then when I think about it with the medical history, we talk about your family history, but really what we may need to be talking about is, what is your generational history? Okay, whether it's influenced by race or by where you were in the world, what part of the country or the world you were in. Was it a safe place? Was it a not safe place? All of that can be wired in. And so that's what we're going to look at. Where is the stress coming from? Is it from today, or is it compounded from generations on down the line? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Where is that stress? Is it my stress, or is it my great-great-grandfather's stress? Which one is it? All right, so let's see. We can go to the first slide, if you don't mind, Rebel. All right, the stress in your body might not even be yours. What if some of the stress in your body did not start with you? And that's what that was the question that we asked ourselves when we came back from that experience. And that's one of those doors where that led out of the dungeons, and they got on ships and they went across the Atlantic Ocean. So that transatlantic slave trade started there. And let me tell you guys, this is not about slavery. Okay. I'm just telling you that's where I got the idea. So don't get all uncomfortable because I'm talking about something that can make some people uncomfortable. But if we don't understand our history, we are bound to repeat it. So this is important. All right. All right. So could the stress experienced by previous generations still influence our biology? And that's what I'm saying. African Americans are not the only people that have been through stress. All races, everybody has had somewhere in their history where they have had a stressful time. So I'm just talking about general stress. I'm going back in my generation, but think about your generations. If you're Irish or Italian or Asian or whatever, is that any stress that is generational, and some people call it a generational curse. Well, it's not necessarily a curse because that makes it mystical. Really, it is generational epigenetics. And that's what we're going to talk about. Generational epigenetics. You have genes, and then you have epigenetics, things that are above the genes, that control the genes. All right, so that's what happened. Standing in Ghana, we were in these dungeons where the slaves were, and it was dark. And it was only one little opening where you could see, well, it's two openings. One where they dropped food down, and then they would take you to a place where you would go in this thing called the door of no return. And we stood there just like that. And I'm going to tell you, it was moving. I mean, it was a heaviness that you felt. My wife and I both felt that. And then as we saw some of the other places and how these people were naked, they were there for months, sometimes waiting for the ships to come. So they would excrement, everything was on the floor. Then they would throw food down there and you would eat. You wouldn't know what you were eating because it was so dark. So, I mean, that is stress, you guys. And then what you have to understand is that out of over 60 million slaves that were taken there, that only about 12 million actually made it across. So what I think is that we were one of the most adaptable people, the ones who made it here. So that's how I look at that as being positive. That made the Africans who came here, they were able to survive the transatlantic slave trade, being in the bottom of ships. So I am almost proud that I have gotten here because that means that my past generations actually survived. So, but still, there's also stress here. We're going to talk about some of the closer generational stressors that people can go through. So, could the stress of my ancestors experienced still influence my biology? So, because extreme stress changes the body. When humans experience extreme stress, their cortisol rises, and sometimes it can be a permanent rewiring. Your blood pressure regulation shifts because you're thinking that you got to get blood to your muscles so you can run or fight. So no matter what the stress is, it's always thinking about survival. Inflammation increases because your body is concerned that, hey, maybe in a fight you're going to get injured. So I have to up this acute inflammation response. And I have to suppress the long-term inflammation response, like that stimulates cancer and all or protects you against cancer. And then also metabolism changes. If you were born, and this is what we're going to talk about, you'll see, if you were born in a area where there was famine or there was war or whatever, your metabolism changes. So you want to store energy, you want to store fat because you don't know where your next meal will come from. So we're going to see an example of that, how whatever environmental or stress that your parents were undergoing during that time, then that is going to influence the child's biology. And you need to recognize that. So if it's something that's a problem, you can understand that this does not come from me. It's not coming from my present environment. It's coming from a past environment. And I'm just reacting to it like what was happening in that environment. So you see, if you were born like I was in the 1960s, and if I don't recognize that I was born with a pattern that was okay in the 1960s, but now in 2026, I can't keep running that pattern because things have changed so much. So I can't be prepared for the 1960s, and I had to be prepared for 2026. All right. I hope that makes sense. All right. Now, this is not just me, babbling about something that happened to me and my ancestors. It's not. Scientists have seen this around the world. Researchers have documented generational stress effects in the Dutch hunger winter famine. It was about 40 years the Dutch people were going through famine. And so they studied generations after that. And when you go through a famine, metabolism changes. Again, you begin to store fat. So they were more likely to be obese, they were more likely to have insulin resistance, and they were more likely to have cardiovascular disease. Primarily, not because the situation that they were in presently was causing those problems. They didn't have those particular risk factors, but they still had those generational changes that had stuck. And so even though they may have been living in an area where there was plenty of food, they still suffered from that change that happened during that famine. So they also looked at this in families of Holocaust survivors, that their stress response was different. Okay, they were more reactive to the stress. So it changes the way your cortisol pattern reacts if you were born in a time where there was difficulty. Now, children of mothers who were pregnant during 9/11, they have a cortisol or a stress imprint. That was a very scary time. Probably the kids born during COVID, they're going to have residual side effects from that. So we need to be able to understand that, hey, look, the environment that you are born in or that you are exposed to early in life, it puts an imprint on you, and you react in a way that would help you to survive during that situation, but it may not help you survive in the present situation. So the key is understanding and being aware that that is what's going on. All right. All right. So this is how this gets passed down. Now we know about genetics. Okay. Oh, my mother had this, and then her mother had that, and then this. That's not necessarily the case. It's not about what genes you inherited. It's about what genes get turned on and what genes get turned off. Okay, so that's how you can expand, learn more, all this, because different genes get turned on and get turned off. And they're basically turned on and turned off by your perception of what is going on. Okay, if you perceive that the situation you're in is dangerous, then survival genes are going to be turned on. Those are the fight or flight genes. So if your perception is danger, stress, I need to be alert, then that's what is going to happen. Those genes will get turned on. Your survival genes get turned on. If you are in a situation where things are comfortable, you're relaxed, everything seems to be fine, you see the world as being safe, you don't see it as being dangerous, then the parasympathetic or the rest and digest genes come on. Those are the ones that help you to thrive, that help you to feel good, give you energy. So how you perceive it, your mindset turns on and turns off your genes, your lifestyle. So we're going to talk about how you turn on and turn off these genes. And that epigenetics, it can be transferred generational too. It can be inherited also. So if you've turned on that fight or flight gene 3 generations back, if you don't recognize it and mentally change your mindset that, hey, look, no, things are safe now, I'm not worried about that. I see that in patients who come in when I ask them how long have they had anxiety, and they'll say, I've had it all my life. I immediately know that they grew up in a dysfunctional home, and they don't know why they're anxious, and they're 40 years old. Their parents have already passed away. They're in a relationship, everything's fine, but they still feel the anxiety. It is because their nervous system got wired for anxiety, for unpredictability, because usually those homes are unpredictable. You don't know if you're safe or you don't know if you're in danger. It changes moment by moment. So they are wired like that. So you don't want to pass down genes that are turned on that's going to cause a problem in generations to come. And what you want to do is recognize it, heal it in yourself so that you can turn off the genes you don't want, turn on the genes you do, and now that gets inherited down the line. So that's why this is so important. I've been talking about how you were raised the first 7 years, all of that determines the future generation and the future of our society and our world. So that's how important it is to understand the stress physiology and how it can be inherited and how you can change the lives of future generations. And I'll show you examples of that. All right. So again, your genes are not your destiny. Okay. You can my mother had cancer. No, there is no such thing as a cancer gene. There is no breast cancer gene. It's not. It's what genes get turned on and turned off. If your anti-cancer genes, which is really your immune system called natural killer cells, if your body is turned on into survival mode, it does not care that a cancer may kill you 6 years from now. It's trying to get you out of the situation now. So it turns off that part of your immune system. So that's why it's so important to understand how you can turn on and turn off your genes. So here's how you can do it. So stress is probably the number one thing that turns on genes that you don't want to turn on. That's why I talk about stress so much. Okay. So you don't want to turn on that gene. So you have to change your perception. You have to change how you think about things, because stress is a perception. Okay. There's certain things. Now, if you put me on top of the mountain and give me some skis and tell me to ski down that mountain, I'm going to be stressed to death because I don't know how to ski. Okay. But if you put a professional skier up there, there's no stress because their perception is that this is something I'm familiar with. I do it all the time. So they have no stress. So that's what I'm talking about. You have to change your perception. Sleep will turn genes on and off. When you go to sleep, you're in that rest and digest mode. So it retrains your nervous system that, hey, there's a time for rest and there's a time for activity. This is the time that I'm going to recover and recuperate. So you need sleep. You need the proper nutrition to turn on and turn off genes. Those genes, again, you can be eating, 3,000 calories, but if there's no nutrition in it, your body thinks there's a famine. And so you start to gain weight. We wonder why people who are in poverty are overweight. You're like, oh, they're eating too much. No, they are trying to get nutrition from food that doesn't have nutritional value. So they're not, I'm speaking in generality. We judge people because we don't understand it. So people who are living in constant poverty, their genes of famine are turned on. They're more likely to be insulin resistant, to have diabetes. See, that's what I'm saying. We blame people and say it's their fault, but really it may not be. All right. So environment, were you in a safe environment or were you in a non-safe environment? It's going to turn on the genes that protect you when things are unsafe, and it's going to turn off the ones that are the safety genes. And your lifestyle, are you acting like you want to live? I say you have to be active. You have to keep learning. You have to keep progressing. I'm 65 and I'm more fervent about learning and being active. I go to the gym because I decided I'm going to change my stress physiology at 65. All right. All right. See, modern life still creates survival stress. Okay. So just think about it. We don't have to be, we are in a war now, but you don't have to be in a war. They don't have to be bombing you. We're in the United States. Right now, maybe we should be worried, but right now, we are not necessarily worried about a bomb or a drone, but we're beginning to. But anyway, that's why you have to change your perception, okay? That's why I try not to look at the news, because I don't want to have the perception that the world is in chaos. I don't need that perception. I need to have the perception that this will work out. Because see, hey, I'm 65. I've gone through the Vietnam War that was going on when I was born. Okay. I was born in the 60s. So I've gone through the Vietnam War. We've gone through these things. I know these things happen. Okay. But this too shall pass. Okay. This too shall pass. Whatever is going on now, this too shall pass. You just have to be able to adapt to these changing environments. All right. So anyway, just let's think about it. We got all of these single mothers raising children. That is stressful. It's stressful when there's two parents raising children. We have financial instability. Just, I'll tell you, this is what March 11th, March 12th, gas prices have almost doubled. So, everybody's worried about AI taking their jobs. So this stress builds. So the children who are born to parents in this age will feel like they have been born here, and they will feel or have it wired the stressors that the mother and the father are feeling. Okay. So we have to be very careful, especially, and even you say, well, what are you worried about, Doc? You're not going to have any children. Well, I got to think about my kids. Okay. They're living in this. Now, they're not married yet. They're not having children, but I need to understand this so that they can be ready for this. All right. I wish I'd have known this when I was really practicing OBGYN, and I would have counseled mothers about this, but hindsight is 2020. Caregiving responsibilities. We're taking care of our sick parents. We're taking care of maybe other people's kids or whatever. We have unsafe environments. If you're living in a place where there's drive-by shootings and you're worried that some stray bullet is going to go into your house, that turns on that stress signal, and that's going to affect generations down the line. We talked about AI and job security and unsafe environments. You can have unsafe home environments, and then you can have unsafe world environments. And that's kind of what we feel now. Children, just think about these children who have been victims of these school shootings, are just in a time where you have to go to school and you have to have drills for an active shooter. We used to have fire drills, and that was stressful. You hear that sound, the loud sound. Just think of the kids and their kids who are going to raise kids who are afraid to go to school. I mean, that's what we have to think about, you guys. Okay, this is not just about me and slavery and all that. It's not. Okay, it's not about that. It's about how are we going to stop these quote unquote generational curses. Is that we have to understand, even if you're in an unsafe environment, it's about the perception and the perception that you give to your children, and that you can change the perception of the situation. And that's what a lot of people say is that, hey, look, I was poor, but I didn't know I was poor until I saw some other people who weren't poor. Okay, that's kind of changing the perception. I'll tell you, that's what happened to me. We weren't rich, but I didn't know we weren't rich because everybody around me was the same situation I was in. So that's how you change the perception. And maybe that's how this generational curse got changed. But I'll tell you exactly, my situation. All right. So stress doesn't have to be one event. Trauma is often accumulated stress. And I see that when I do the cortisol saliva testing, is that usually when that cortisol is down or depleted, it's because women or men, anyone, has gone through multiple stressors. Okay. And that happens around age 40, 50, and 60. You get older, your children are having to go to, trying to finance them going to college. You have parents who are getting sick. You have women and men who are going through hormonal changes. So you have an emotional stress, and then you have a physical stress of your hormones changing. So all of that is a cumulative stress, and you can do that for a certain amount of time, but usually, eventually around age 40, 50, 60, the accumulation of all those stressors and the turning on and turning off of those genes has ended up causing you health problems, functional problems where you can't think as well. All of these, the nervous system never fully resets So the body adapts to survival, and it just turns on the survival gene and just leaves it on. Okay. And you can't do that forever. Sooner or later, it's going to cause a problem. So when survival mode becomes normal, many people feel constantly tired. I hear people all the time come in my office. I have this overwhelming fatigue. I sleep and I wake up still tired. That is survival mode being turned into a normal occurrence. They just feel anxious or overwhelmed, where what happens is that things, after a while, things that they could do easily, now because the cortisol is down, their daily source of energy is down, they feel anxious or overwhelmed, even with mild tasks. So, and you're saying, oh, wait, hey, am I getting dementia? What's going on with me? So then that becomes another stress because you don't know what and why it's happening, why things are happening to you. You're not able to relax. You have mental fog. I'm telling you, this is what I see every day in my office. These are the people that I see. They're tired, they're anxious and overwhelmed. Their hormones out of whack, so they can't lose weight. They can't relax. They wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They say they're mentally foggy. This is what I see. So this is why I'm telling you, stress really rules everything. Okay. If you can understand stress, I told you several years ago when I read that study that said 75 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress-related complaints or disorders. And that made me dedicate my life to learning about stress and hormones. And so now I'm continuing this study and say, wait a minute, it's just not the stress that you've lived through. It's the stress that your parents and your grandparents and your great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, what stress did they pass down the line? So I think this is just, incredibly interesting. And I think it's just something that you want to think about because, like I said, now, instead of just taking your family history about your mother and father, it's like, hey, what was going on during the time when you were born? Okay. And we almost have to have like a little history lesson. Like, was it a stressful time during that year or 2 years that you were in gestation, that you were in the womb and womb? And so that's what you got to start thinking about. So the part that matters the most, research suggests that stress biology can influence the next generation, which means something powerful. Your biology is not just about you. It is about generations to come. And so just think, you could make a change today, and it could, and whether you're in your reproductive stage or not, but you could make a change today. You could tell it to your children to say, hey, look, we've got to create an environment when you get pregnant that we are preparing your child for whatever may come in whatever generation, because we don't know what's going to happen 20 years from now. But we got to make sure that our stress doesn't get passed on where they are not able to function in whatever the future holds. So that's the important part. And so I know it's time for a break. And I think the next slide, that's where I want to go, is how can you change? How can you do this? How can you look at what is going on with you? Because first you have to be aware. You have to be aware of what's happening. Then you have to be clear about how and what and why it happened. Then that's when you can, once you recognize and you're aware of it, that's when you can start making the changes, and then you can pass it on to someone else. All right, so let's take a break. Then we're going to talk about, I'm going to tell you my personal history, how I think this happened to me, and how maybe you understanding that now I understand who I am at this present point in time, that maybe that'll help you become clear and aware of how you got to this point and how you can either continue some good generational epigenetics, or you can change it and you can go a different path. All right, so it's break time.
We are going to a quick break, so stay with us as we explore the ageless blueprint right here on W4HC Radio and Talk4 TV. An ancient secret with a modern twist for better health and vitality. Dr. Taylor will be right back. Taking care of your health shouldn't mean taking a handful of pills every day. At Taylor MD Formulations, they create doctor-developed supplements that combine the best natural ingredients so you get the results you need with fewer pills. Taylor MD Formulations is backed by science designed for real life with real results. Less pills, better health, doctor approved. Shop now at TaylorMDFormulations.com and discover smarter supplements for smarter health. That's TaylorMDFormulations.com. We are back for more of Ageless Blueprint. Once again, let's join Dr. Taylor for more insights and research on the ancient secret to better health and a better life in modern times. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
All right, we're back. I'm Dr. Taylor. I am the hormone doctor and the spiritual MD, and we're talking about, is the stress that you're dealing with right now, is it really yours or is it someone else's? All right, so let's look at this. What I want to talk about is that you have a choice right now. You can either carry on the great things that you feel are very beneficial for you and future generations, and you just now you know how to emphasize those. Or if you don't like, the past family history or emotional history, this is where you can make a change. I've learned from all of this mindful meditation and all these guys is that the only thing you have control of is this present moment right now. This is the only thing you have control of. You have no control of changing the past, and you have no way of really changing the future unless you change the present moment right now. So I'm going to encourage you to say, hey, look, right now you can make a decision and it could affect 10 generations down the line. That's how important I think this is. So let me tell you. So this is let me see if I'm right here. Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you a story. I think I want to go here first. All right. So I'm just going one generation back because this is what I know. All right. So my father was born in 1920. It was actually 1923. My mother was born in 1927. So he grew up in a world that told him he was not equal. Okay. But here's what happened. He was in World War II. He was in Germany. He was driving a supply truck. And he saw in Europe where Africa, it was black people, colored people, they were treated with respect. They were treated equal. Okay. So he came back with a different mindset. All right. My father was actually a Baptist minister. All right. So he began to see that. All right. Now, I was born in 1960. So what was happening then? It was the civil rights movement. All right. So that just reinforced the fact that, hey, look, we are equal. All right. This is the time for civil rights change. Okay. So I was born when this ideology was being created. So my dad was looking at it as, hey, you are equal. So this is what he told his children. And I grew up, I also remember busing and integration. And if you're not my age, you don't realize this. But there was chaos in the streets where people were fighting integration. I actually went to an integrated school, okay, even in elementary school. And what my father told me over and over again is that if anyone in that class makes an A, you can make an A too. He said, if nobody in that class makes an A, I don't expect you to make it. But if anybody makes it, I expect you to make it. He told all our children that. It was 6 of us. And here's what happened. 5 of us were admitted to Vanderbilt, and the other one went to Northwestern. My brother, who is 78 now, 70, he'll be 70, 77. He was in the second class of African Americans to be allowed in Vanderbilt. So you see, this stress we're talking about is not 10 generations back. Okay, we're talking about my generation. My brothers and sisters had to deal with this. Okay, so all I'm saying is that my father changed a generation. Okay, so let me go back. Okay, so that moment changed the generation. The civil rights movement was rising. America was confronting segregation, injustice, and belief that some people were less than others. The shift, for many families, something began to change. A new idea began to take hold. We are equal. And when belief changes, generations can change. Okay, so all you have to do is you have to change your belief. Okay, I give credit to that. That is why, this is what I'll tell you. I was born in 1960, so my other brothers and sisters were born in 1940s and 50s. And I think I'm a little bit more of a rebel than my older brothers and sisters because I was raised in a rebellious time. So that's why I can go off and do Asians Blueprint, and I'm doing saliva testing. I'm a rebel. I'm a rebel of the establishment. My brother, who's a doctor, who's 10 years older than me, he's not a rebel. He's a conservative. Okay, because that's kind of how you had to be more passive during that time in order to survive. And when I was being raised, you had to be more of a rebel to survive. So I'm just now I'm learning this, and it's allowing me to understand myself more, and how allowing me to understand my brothers and sisters more. All right. So a lot of times they say when you teach something, you end up teaching yourself. So as I was going through this, I'm like, that's why I'm a little different than my older brothers and sisters. I'm at the end of the baby boomer generation. I was born in 1960. It ends in 63. So I'm on this cusp. Okay. I'm a little more like my children's generation. I'm trying to get on, TikTok and all of this stuff. I'm a little bit more toward trying to be like my kids than I'm trying to be like my older brothers and sisters or my parents, because I'm on the cusp of this baby boomer generation and whatever came after that. So I want you to start thinking generationally how that's affecting you. When were you born? What was happening in the world? What were your parents concerned about? Were they concerned about the next meal on the table, or did they have plenty and they had this, their marriage was disrupted? What was actually going on when I was in the womb? What did that situation prepare me for? What did they rewire my nervous system to expect once I was brought into the world? It's really cool stuff, I think. Okay. What do you think, Rebel? I'm going on here, but this really turned me on. It helped me to understand why I'm like I am. Why am I such a rebel? Why do I fight against the institutions? Why do I fight against propaganda? Hey, I was born in the 60s. So anyway, when were you?
Interesting. When was I born? That's a secret.
Yeah, I know. But does this make sense to you?
It definitely does. And it's making me want to go back and look at time frames, like when my parents were developing me, and as I grew, I want to see what was going on in life. I remember some things. I mean, I remember when the space shuttle exploded. And things like that. I remember growing up in New Orleans and watching a lot of things. See, I fall in the middle because I'm Italian, and the people in certain neighborhoods treated everybody disrespectful.
Yeah.
I'd watch some of my friends get called horrible things, and then people would call us horrible things too. It's like, why y'all doing this?
And that's why I said when I started out, I'm like, that's just my history is slavery. But almost every race has had somewhere at some point in time where some other race or country or whatever was trying to dominate them. And you dominate somebody by making them feel less than. And so, like I say, the Italians, the Irish, Asians, the Native Americans, all of them, they are carrying the stress of their ancestors. And you just, like I said, you have to decide, okay, is it a good thing? Now, some of it is resilience. Okay, I felt like by surviving the transatlantic slave trade, I feel like I'm resilient. I can handle anything. Okay, if I can handle that. I learned that when I climbed up that mountain to see those doggone gorillas, 10,000 feet up a mountain. I was like, I can handle anything now. So, but anyway, that's a part of it. So that's what I'm saying. This goes across generations. You just think about, the stuff that you probably remember, the Bosnia and Serbia when the Soviet Union broke up. That was chaotic. I mean, there's always chaotic things going on. The power of this is how can you remain calm when everything around you is going crazy? I will tell you one thing that my brother told me, who's a doc who was older than me. He said, look, this was like when I was first year in medical school and he had been out. He said, if you can remain calm when everything around you is going crazy in the operating room or in the emergency room, people will begin to respect you. So here's what I did. And when I was doing my residency in OBGYN, that was my goal, is whether it was emergency, C-section, whatever, I was going to stay calm. And this is what it got me. It got me to be chief resident of OBGYN. And I don't feel like I did anything special. Is I was able to be calm and make good decisions, really because of what my brother kind of told me, is that you need to stay calm. And this is what, when chaos is going on around you, can you calm yourself? And that's why I started doing meditation and telling people about meditation, because it teaches you how to calm your brain down, even if your external environment is going absolutely crazy. And that is a skill I think everybody should learn. How can I keep my internal environment where I don't turn on these stress genes, even though stress is all around me? That is the skill that I need people to try and learn. All right. So here we go.
Questions.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go.
First question. Are you saying stress can be coded into our DNA and RNA?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. It gets encoded. Like I said, you have to think of your DNA as your hardware on your computer, and your epigenetics, that shows you what program you're looking at. So your genes have all of these programs. It has stress programs and it has non-stress programs. Okay. And so what it will turn on the gene. And now if somebody doesn't turn it off, that gene stays turned on. Okay. The gene didn't change, but the switch that turned on that gene came on. And if you don't turn it off, it's going to get passed down the line. All right. So next question. I hope I explained that okay.
I believe so. Let's see. Are you saying we experience things and the feelings control our response behavior as we go along in life?
Yeah. So if that stress system is always on, you're going to feel this constant anxiety. Okay. And constant anxiety, it turns off your frontal lobe. When you're anxious, it's very hard for you to think and to think logically. You begin to react. And that's what we call your lower part of your mammalian or limbic brain. You just act totally on emotion and not logic. And so you end up making decisions based on a system that was turned on 3 generations before. Okay. So you have to recognize, hey, where's that anxiety coming from? You have to consciously be aware of it and consciously do things to turn on the right genes and turn those genes off. Okay, we can go ahead. That's a few more slides I want to get through, but you have another question?
Yes. Can people have anxiety and not know they have anxiety because it's their normal?
Exactly. That's right. That's what we was talking about. Most people think that the way they feel is normal because that's how they felt all their lives. Okay. But a lot of times what you think is normal is not normal. Okay. I have a book called The Myth of Normal. Okay. Normal just means what are most people experiencing. Okay. So if you go and get your blood pressure and everybody has high blood pressure, and then if you look at medicine, they do a bell-shaped curve, it will show you that high blood pressure is the norm. So yeah, if everybody, normal just means what is most common. And if it's common that people have been raised in a stressful environment, then anxiety and the stress pattern becomes normal. Everybody thinks that not sleeping well is normal, or being tired is normal, or not being able to control their weight is normal. No, all of that is a stress and hormone and nervous system dysfunction that may have been coded into your genes 100 years ago. Anything else?
We do, but you need to finish the slides first because
I'm just going to go real quick. So Ageless Blueprint, living begins when we understand stress physiology, hormones, lifestyle, and mindset. Okay, I'm going to go through this real quickly because I do want to answer your questions. So the final thought, the stress in your body might not be yours, but the healing can begin with you. And what you change today may change the biology of the next generation. So this is my big audacious goal. I've been reading this book called The Art of Impossible. And so he talks about how people who thinks things are impossible become possible when one person does it. Like the 4-minute mile. They thought nobody could run the mile in less than 4 minutes until Roger Bannister did it. Nobody thought you could fly until the Wright brothers did it. Well, this is my thing. I want to make saliva testing, cortisol, estrogen, progesterone. I want to make that as commonplace as knowing that when you need your blood pressure checked, you know that he's supposed to put a blood pressure cuff on you. When you want to know your temperature, you know you're supposed to use a thermometer. And when you want to know about your hormones, everybody knows you do a saliva test. Okay. The other thing I want to do is to have women and men learn enough physiology so that they can teach their kids about estrogen and progesterone and what makes things grow and how your hormones can be out of balance. And just think, if everybody knew from an early age, hey, I need to worry about my estrogen progesterone imbalance, because if it's out of balance, I could get fibroids, I could have infertility, and my moods could be crazy. It'll make menopause very hard for me. But if I monitor this and I know my physiology that should have been taught in the 5th grade health class, if you can teach your daughter that, it will change this hormone confusion that has been going on for 50 years. So if you are part of Ageless Blueprint, you are a part of changing future generations. Because if you know this information and you can teach it to your children and your friends to say, hey, look, if you're not getting saliva tested, you are just guessing. That's why there's so much confusion, because people aren't using the right test. Hormone clarity equals saliva testing. Blood pressure medicine equals blood pressure cuff. If I want to know my blood count, I know I'm supposed to go get a CBC. My impossible goal is to make it where people, not doctors, people understand this, okay? Because if you can understand this, you can change generations to come, that they know how to measure stress through cortisol testing, that through heart rate variability. This is not information that's hard for people to understand. But if you understand it, you can change the life of your children, the children that's coming after that, by understanding stress physiology and epigenetics. So that is my goal. And the reason why I get up here and do this is that I want you guys who have questions, I want to give you the answers. And I told some people last night, I want you to lose some sleep thinking about this. I want you to lose some sleep thinking about how important this is. I want you to lose some sleep thinking about how, if I had known this earlier, how my life could have been different. So that's my goal, you guys. All right. I kind of get choked up about this because it's like something that I have to get out. I have to get out of me. So I come up with all these ideas, and almost is overwhelming because how important it is to me and how I can see that that's a part of purpose in life. Can I do something that is going to change the life of people that come after me? Okay. So I got to stop. I'll get emotional. I'll start crying here in a minute, So, hey, we got 1 minute left. So if we got one more question, let's go.
Let's see. Are you saying we can take control of our genes?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm telling you. I've been sitting here for 50 minutes trying to say that one thing. Yes, you can take control of your genes. There is nothing permanent about your genetic makeup. You can change your genes at any point in time by changing those things that we just talked about. Your mindset, your nutrition, lifestyle factors, how well you sleep. All of those can change your genes, and it can change the length of your life. I did a podcast on the telomere effect. Is that how changing those lifestyle things that we talked about, it can lengthen your life. And if it doesn't even lengthen your life, it can make your life more enjoyable. Okay. is by taking control of your life and your health, your genes, and of what your future generations are going to have to deal with. So anyway, I know it's time to go. Thank you for your attention. Hey, comment, give me some feedback. Tell me, join my school group, do all the things I'm telling you to do, and we'll see you next week. All right?
Thanks for joining Dr. Taylor today. If you missed any part of this show, just check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Ageless Blueprint is every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. Together, we discovered ancient secrets to better health through science and spirituality made for modern times. Until then, feel free to check out agelessblueprintpodcast.com and TaylorMDFormulations.com for more information.